Right. Good morning once again, everyone. I just need confirmation from you guys. If you can hear me, you can just post on the chat there. Just say yes on the chat so that I see if people can hear me, and then we can start with our debate. Right. Well, I don't see any response from anyone, but I will just try and do a sound check myself on my side. I was saying if you can hear me, just post something on the chat there. I think it should be enabled for everyone so that I can see that everyone can hear me, and then we can start with, okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Nuntlata. So I just want to confirm if my panelists are here with me, and then we will start with our debate. My name is Different Mavasa, and I am the Deputy President of the Arise Black Child movement. So let me just start by saying thank you so much to everyone who has taken their time to join us for this interesting debate that we have today. So it's not going to take so much of your time. So once we start with the debate, we should be done in about 40 minutes. So I will give you the rules and the outline so that we know what is expected of us. But first, let me just confirm if all my panelists are here. So we are going to be having two teams. The first team, which will be our affirmative team, will be debating that or arguing that Nelson Mandela was a hero. And the opposing team will be debating that Nelson Mandela was a sellout. So as I did mention earlier, one of our panelists couldn't make it to the debate today because of load shedding, but we did manage to get a replacement. So the debate will go on as planned. And so we have got, for the affirmative team, or the hero side in this case, we have got Simpiwe. I'm sure, yes, Simpiwe is here in the meeting. And then we also have Nonhlanhla. Let me just see if Nonhlanhla is here. Yes, Nonhlanhla is here. Thank you so much. And then for the opposing team, we have got Nkosinathi Mahlangu, who should be here. Yes, I see Nkosinathi. And then in the place of Noluthando, we will have Ruth. And Ruth is here as well. So the purpose of today's debate is to just explore the life of Nelson Mandela from both sides, to see whether and how the actions of our former leaders have influenced our position where we are today as Black people. And we know that in society, Nelson Mandela is one person who is regarded as a hero and a symbol of peace. But it is not the same for some people in society who believe otherwise. And we saw it necessary to have this debate and really look into the life of Nelson Mandela. So I'll ask that when you join the meeting, please just mute your mic when it is not your turn to speak. I will explain how we will engage when we open the floor to the audience. So our debate is gonna have 4 rounds. In the first round, we will get the initial arguments from both teams. So we will have the first speaker from the affirmative team, who will speak for 5 minutes, and then we will have um, the opposing team to also speak for 5 minutes. And then we will have part two in round one, where we get further arguments from both teams. So we'll have the second speakers from both teams also speak for 5 minutes each. So that round should take us 20 minutes. And then in the second round, where we will have our rebuttals, the round will only last for 6 minutes. And then we will have one speaker from each team to respond to the arguments of the other team. And then from there, we will have closing statements from both teams. It will only be for 4 minutes, so 2 minutes for each team there. And then from there, we will open the floor to the audience to be able to engage with our panelists, to ask questions or to make comments. And we will do that in the last 10 minutes. That will be round 4 of the debate. So what I'm going to do now is to just give you the rules of engagement so that everyone knows what is expected of them, and that
love is for like 4 years. When I came, you are very friendly. So I spoke with someone from his department. He's a Nigerian, but
let me just mute Gail there. All right, good. So I'm just going to read the rules, and then we will be ready to start. Now, all the participants must refer to one another with dignity and respect. No personal attacks will be tolerated. So you speak to the arguments that a person is raising, and not really attack them directly if you have got issues with what someone said. And speakers must stick to the allocated time, and I, as the facilitator, will act as the timekeeper. So if you exceed your time, I'm just gonna mute your mic, and then we continue with the debate. So all speakers are to speak without interruptions. Any comments or questions will be reserved for the last round. That is round number 4. So if you have a question, keep it for later. Even if you have a very burning question when someone is speaking, just keep it for later when we open the floor to everyone. So round 2, which is our rebuttals, is strictly for rebuttals and responses. So speakers may not use that opportunity to add new information to their arguments, but can only use that round to respond to the opposite team. So the audience will also be allowed to make comments and to ask questions, and they will be given a maximum of 1 minute to speak. Since we only have 10 minutes to do so, everyone will be given a maximum of 1 minute to either ask a question or make a comment. So a member of the audience will only be allowed to speak once they are recognized and permitted to do so by the facilitator. So I will ask that we use the raise hand button when you have a question or a comment, and then I will unmute you and then give you an opportunity to speak. And you can only speak when you have been given the go-ahead to do so. A question may be directed to a team or an individual. So feel free to direct a question to a specific individual who raised a certain issue that you want to follow up on, or a question can be directed to the entire team. Right, the person responding to the question will have a maximum of 2 minutes to speak. And then follow-up questions may be asked. Preference will be given to the person who originally asked the question, but anyone is free to follow up on a question that was originally asked by someone else. So if you feel like you're not satisfied with the answer, you are free to make a follow-up question, even if you were not the one who asked the question in the first place. So right, that is it from my side, and then we will proceed to round 1 of the debate, of which we'll get our our initial argument. And so I will ask Simpiwe from the affirmative team to speak first, and then she will have 5 minutes to do so. And then after Simpiwe, Nolutando will speak, yes, for 5 minutes from the opposing team. So let me see if Simpiwe is unmuted there. Yes, Simpiwe, you have the platform, you may speak.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Okay, cool. Is it fine?
Yes, I think, yeah, I can hear you from my side. I think everyone can.
Okay, cool. Is the time ready? Please tell me when it's ready.
Yes, Simpiwe, you may start. You have exactly 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. We concede to the fact that post-apartheid era and the appointment of Nelson Mandela as head of state in South Africa did not necessarily bring about total change and transformation towards what was readily expected by most members of society. However, we do not think that not being able to achieve all objectives makes one a failure, nor do we think that that makes one a sellout. This brings me to the criteria of what we think a sellout is. So in this debate, I'll be giving two levels of analysis: the characterization of what a sellout is and how we think Nelson Mandela therefore does not meet or complement that criteria. And secondly, I'll be then giving you the factors that we think make him rather a hero instead of a sellout. Let's get straight into it. So we think that a sellout, especially into this context, would be someone who'd continue to have made Black lives even more miserable. We think this is someone who would have continued to compromise the integrity, the morality, as well as the authenticity of Black people. We don't necessarily think that the decision that Nelson Mandela made at CODESA continued to make Black lives even more miserable. However, we do think that there are loopholes in certain areas of development that still are questioned today, such as economic freedom. But we don't think just because that one aspect is something that is still in progress, it actually should make him a sellout. We think we should recognize significant changes like the better education that we actually got post-apartheid, the dignity towards Black lives, and the basic rights enforcements that were stripped away from Black people before the end of apartheid. The right to life, the right to dignity, the right to life and freedom, the right to liberty and freedom, the right to social security, etc. We think these significant changes make Nelson Mandela a hero. We think a hero is someone we celebrate for the minimal change that they actually bring to society. We don't necessarily think that we should actually take the blame to him for all the failures that were actually recurring in South Africa. Now, what are the factors that make Nelson Mandela not to be a sellout, rather a hero? We think that ANC as an institution actually has the responsibility and the mandate to continue from the foundation that Nelson Mandela has actually laid for them. We don't think that we should actually take the blame to Nelson Mandela for failures such as economic freedom. We think the leaders in the ANC post Nelson Mandela's leadership has the responsibility to say, in the aspects that Nelson Mandela was not able to look into, was not able to develop, we have the responsibility to make a difference. If you want to call someone a sellout, call Cyril Ramaphosa a sellout, call Jacob Zuma a sellout, Inkandla, Marikana, and all these other corruption scandals that we know from our leaders who actually had the responsibility to make a difference from what Nelson Mandela had actually laid as a foundation. But secondly, we think the other factor that makes Nelson Mandela a hero is the fact that the main objective at the CODESA negotiation was not necessarily to transform everything in South Africa. The main objective at that time was actually to bring peace in South Africa. That was the main objective of the CODESA negotiation. It was to bring down the violent unrest that were actually happening between Black people and white people. We think this is something that needs to be recognized. Moreover, we think that each and every person or a hero has their own principles and their own their own principles that they actually aim to achieve. We think reconciliation and peace was one of the most defining factors about Nelson Mandela, which he had actually been able to achieve. We think that at a point in which we see the peace and reconciliation between white and Black people, that is when we can actually say Nelson Mandela has achieved his own principles of peace and reconciliation. And for that, we celebrate him. For that, we think he's a hero. Do we think that economic freedom is here? Definitely not. We think this is something in progress. However, we don't think that we take the blame to Nelson Mandela. And moreover, we don't think that him not being able to look into that aspect makes him a sellout. But we think that if you want to actually build a stable economy, you need the things that Nelson Mandela had actually brought into place. Stable education system, number one. Gender equality, access to information and technology. We think these are the developments that Mandela had actually brought in place for actually the youth to be able to build a stable economy for themselves. Moreover, we think that the things that he had brought into place has actually been able to give autonomy to Black people, which is the independence for them to be able to actually stand up for themselves and actually build an economy for themselves rather than actually wanting ownership of what was taken away. We think this gives Black people the autonomy.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Simpiwe, your time is up. Yes, thank you very much for that. I hope people are taking notes so that when we move to round 4, people know exactly what to ask. Very interesting points being raised. So we're going to move to the first speaker of the opposing team, and that will be Nathi Mahlangu, to give the initial arguments from the opposing team. Mr. Mahlangu, you have the floor and your time starts now, exactly 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, sir. I think what we need to understand first before we dive into this is the difference between left-wing politics and right-wing politics. Left-wing politics believes in social justice, nationalization of resources in the country, and redistributive measures, including social and economic policies. These are very important to understand for the left wing. Right wing emphasizes private property, capitalism, and non-nationalization of things. The ANC is a left-wing political party. That's what it was, at least before 1994. They believed that wealth should be redistributed to the people. That did not happen. Now, what makes a person a sellout is believing something beforehand and changing that belief after meeting up with rich people and after negotiations. We should not be hiding behind negotiations, guys, saying that no, because of the situation, he had to sell a little bit and then we justify it. Selling is selling. Not to be rude, happy birthday to the man, but selling is selling. We see capitalists partnering with revolutionaries in 1980s. They were making these attempts to partner with revolutionaries because they could see that no, the country's not at peace, change is coming, and they needed to adjust. And to adjust, you have to feed the revolutionary so that it doesn't revolutionize too much. We see Mandela enjoying the company of the rich after being released from prison. It's your Clive Mandela, I think, yes, and your Nicky Oppenheimer. In fact, he stayed in one of those compounds, and we don't know what kind of discussions were happening there. But looking at the result of his presidency and the poverty rates and things that we expected to change, that did not change. The selling happened around there. And another thing we should look at is the death of Chris Hani. We should understand what happened. If you were to listen to Chris Hani, you'd see that he was a true revolutionary and he believed that the land should belong to the people. And that kind of craziness was not accepted by the rich. at the time. So, and also you should look into the stroke of OR Tambo and understand what happened there. Then you should also see the negotiations that the country under the administration of Mandela were having with the IMF. You would see that the IMF is moving away from the left and more into the right, which is the privatization of things. Another thing we need to look at is the policies. If you look at the NDR, National Democratic Revolution, having things like BEE falling under it, you will see that their intention at the time was not to bring wealth back to the people, but to have a few grow in the economy. And that was the idea after 1994. The idea was to grow macroeconomics so that employment can increase. But to grow macroeconomics, guys, you need to take a liberal approach. You need to grow the earning of companies, private companies that are owning land. From today, if you can look at our politics, if you look at what Nkosazana Zuma is fighting for, the people are fighting Nkosazana Zuma is Anglo-American. They own tobacco in this country. They have it and they are fighting here. Anglo-American. We don't own our tobacco that we are producing in this country. And although that's happening now, this began because of the administration of President Nelson Mandela. He sold out. It's not a nice thing to say, and I know it's against what our high school textbook were telling us and the Nobel Peace Prize that he received. But things were not nationalized. People remained poor, and that is something that we have to acknowledge. RDP white paper, which was adopted by the government of national unity in 1994, omitted any reference to nationalization. They did not intend to nationalize anything. And at the time, Black people, about 30% of them, if not more, were illiterate, uneducated, and unskilled. So we can't expect them to grow in these companies and be employed. It would require a process of education first, whereas owning land would not require education. Owning land would just need a title deed and money coming in, wealth coming in because you are a national of the country. Those are the kind of policies we're supposed to move towards to help get people out of poverty. But those policies were not put into place. What was in the Freedom Charter and what President Nelson Mandela was doing was not the same thing. What was being done by his administration is not the same thing. And that is something that we have to admit. Transformation was promised.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mahlangu. Your 5 minutes is up. Thank you so much. We will now move to part 2 of round 1. So I'll be inviting the other members of both teams to just give us further arguments. So we will start with Nonhlanhla from the affirmative team. Let me just unmute Nonhlanhla so that you can speak. You can try from your side and see if you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Okay.
Right.
Should I start?
Just a second. Yes, your 5 minutes start now.
Right. I envision a South Africa where Black people can continuously occupy strategic positions. I envision an African continent where Black people are able to attain that dignity through the land that they own. Furthermore, I do think that I want a progressive society and that is what everyone else wants as a Black person. But I wanted to look at, does all of the things that we want genuinely, in the name of not attaining them, mean that we don't see Nelson Mandela as the hero that he is? Very important to note. We understand that white supremacy and white privilege is a real issue, but not only is it a real issue, we do understand that the fight against apartheid and the fight against white privilege is something that no one person can do. We understand that the fact that Nelson Mandela is an individual and there can never be an individual that wants to fight white supremacy alone. Outside of that, would like to recognize Nelson Mandela as a hero himself, for attempting to fight the system, even though the outcomes are not as favorable. But however, we'll also look into the idea of outcomes and what those things mean. In a case where we would like to identify people as like sellouts, we'll then identify everyone else, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King as a sellout because they have not been able to fight the entire system. But today what we're going to discuss as a whole, we're just going to discuss the idea of the land issue and what those things generally mean for us being individuals, right? We do think that the idea itself and the idea of like the land issue and all that is something that Nelson Mandela would have wanted for us as a society. We don't think that he's a sellout because he literally like not wanted us to have the land and stuff like that. We think that Nelson Mandela is an entity wanted us to have the land and wanted us to like advance ourselves as Black people. Now let us look at the measures that he has taken to try and advance us as Black people. There are measures that he took to actually allow us to be able to be part of the economy and advance ourselves as Black people. The first thing that he does is to create a democratic society that allow us as Black people to occupy the land, but not only to occupy the land, but to be very set in the idea that we can own the land without prosecution or without the fear of being like prosecuted or anything like that. In section 25, subsection 8, Nelson Mandela tells us, and like the entire constitution tells us, and remember that the constitution is the supreme like law that governs how the country should run, right? It tells us that no provision of section 25 may impede the state from taking legislative and other measures to achieve land, water, and related reform in the interest of justice. What this genuinely means is that we as the people have been given the power by Nelson Mandela to be able to retain back our land, to be able to retain back our dignity as Black people, right? We do think that the ideology also tells us that like we could have done better in terms of like fighting the system. Nelson Mandela was not supposed to be in agreements with these people. Nelson Mandela was not in the first place supposed to negotiate with these people. Perhaps Nelson Mandela was supposed to say, let us fight for the land, let us fight for those things. But I want us to understand how like white supremacy works and how the white system continuously tells us as Black people that we cannot just fight things in the way that it is. The reason behind this is that the entire system and the entire like westernized idea of this is continuously supported by the International Monetary Fund. That is why even when like there were sanctions around South Africa being an apartheid government, the International Monetary Fund continued to supply weapons to kill Black people. The reason is the entire system and the way we live our lives is continuously in the hands of the Western people. And even if the Black people and Christian people like Nelson Mandela, Christian and Robert Sobukwe can try to fight the system exists in such a way that it does not allow us to be who we truly want to be and fight for things that we really want as individuals. Furthermore, I think very important to notice that perhaps we could have taken the issue of like being violent about it and taking the land violent, doing the land grabs that were done in Zimbabwe. Some of the things that you should ask yourself as an individual is why is it that even after Zimbabwe has gained its independence and is in the hands of a Black person, as we'd assume, why is it that the economy is digressing? Why are they still like unlivable conditions where people are affected by hyperinflation and all those issues? The reason behind all of this is how the system is continuously in the hands of white people and white supremacy thing in its existence. But back to Nelson Mandela. We would like to say, and say it in a way that most of us will understand it. And the idea of trying to have policies and the idea of forcefully taking the land from like people that potentially used to own the land, we do think that we like the chat really here is the ideology and seeing how powerful white supremacy is and how like white supremacy exists in such a way that it allows us to identify our own people as sellouts simply because they've created an entire system that makes it difficult as people to like try and do those things, right? Furthermore, I think the research that I've done also outlines the fact that almost all of the countries in Africa have tried by all means to have these policies around redistribution, reform of land and all that. But the chat is around like only like 13% of the total land of those countries is owned by Black people. The reason behind the ideology of this, behind having rules that have existed for more than 27 years into democracy,
right.
it is the idea of white supremacy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Your time has expired. And we will now hear from Ruth from the opposing team. Ruth, you can just unmute yourself from your side because I'm struggling to see everyone who is part of the meeting. I have to scroll all the way down. So you can just unmute yourself and then your time will start as soon as you start speaking.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. Before I start with my speech, I'd like to just address a few points of rebuttal, and this is to address Simphiwe's speech and Nonhlanhla's speech, who say that Nelson Mandela is not a sellout. I'll start with Nonhlanhla, who just spoke now, and spoke in length about land and land redistribution and why Nelson Mandela couldn't have been given the responsibility of making sure that the Black majority owns the land as they should have, and redressing the wrongs that were done by the Land Act of 1913. I think that is not the debate. The land debate is very nuanced, and to show how difficult it is to redistribute land and give it to everyone in the country, we can see how Black Americans, even though they've had democracy for more than 400 years, it is very difficult for them to give land to Black people and other non-white bodies who are in the country. So we understand how difficult the land shift is. I think how I like to shift the dynamics or the paradigm of this debate is not talk about economic freedom or talk about how Nelson Mandela could have ensured that Black people live better lives in terms of like economics, but how he didn't use his social capital, his influence and his power to ensure that the way that Black people were viewed and how they were interacted with changes. I think we need to acknowledge that in 1990, when Nelson Mandela was released at the time, he became one of the most influential and powerful human beings to ever walk the face of the planet Earth. When he started his campaigns against HIV and how he was influential because one of his daughters, sorry? Oh, okay, sorry. And when one of his daughters died because of HIV, and he became one of the most influential philanthropists towards the cause and making sure that there is some sort of support for HIV positive patients, that shows how he was a powerful person who, even though the system is against him, even though we understand how systematic racism and how white supremacy has made chat about land and economic reform difficult, him as an individual who had influence at the time, the world was literally looking at him. Everyone was seeing what he was saying, and everyone was listening to him, expecting certain things. And if he had, for instance, included his wife, Winnie Mandela, and I think that is one of the biggest chats that I want to have to say, he was a sellout because he didn't even use his influence to speak about gender equality. And this is what Simphiwe says. Simphiwe says that Nelson Mandela is not a sellout because he was for gender equality. He was for quality education for the Black child, and he ensured that all that he could do in his limited term, he did. But I think if he really was for gender equality, he would have addressed the exclusion that the ANC expressed of Winnie and allowed for her to have a bigger position in the party, even as deputy president, or something more powerful, given the fact that she fought the struggle. And if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have been released. His name wouldn't have been spoken about throughout the world for the number of decades that it was, for the number of decades that she led the struggle and was part of Umkhonto weSizwe and all of that. So I think he neglected or used his influence for personal benefits. And this is true. We can see how powerful he has become as a brand name. Today is Nelson Mandela Day because he is one of the most influential human beings on the face of the planet. He fought the cause of HIV because it's something that affected him personally. One of his daughters died because of the disease. And I think that is what we qualify then as being a sellout. Getting into spaces where you have certain ideologies, as my fellow speaker said, you have certain ideologies walking into the space. You are a member of the ANC, which wants redistribution of land. You are a former member of Umkhonto weSizwe, which wanted radical economic transformation and political transformation. But then when you get the position and you get the opportunity and the power, you preach reconciliation against the grain of what the people want at the time. I think that one of the things that qualify him for me as a sellout is the TRC. The TRC was strong-arming Black people into forgiving white people when they weren't ready to do that, making them go through hours and hours of listening to trials and cases of how white people tortured and killed our brothers and our fathers, and then force these Black people to say, I forgive you, and give these white people immunity. That is selloutism at its best. I think that is strong-arming people who have been traumatized, who have been downtrodden and oppressed for centuries, and saying to these people at the moment where they could have their revenge if that's what they wanted, or have their closure and their peace the way that they want, you strong-arm them into a reconciliation because you have the power to preach that message. Today, we have the Day of Reconciliation, December 16th, because this is a personal ideology that Nelson Mandela had for whatever reason, maybe for preventing a civil war, maybe for ensuring that the country has peace and stability at the time, but at whose cost? At what expense? At the expense of his people. It wasn't at the best interest of people, of Black people at the time, and other non-white bodies to go through the TRC and to force them to reconcile and forgive their oppressors, and at the same time not even give them the economic means to allow that reconciliation, because all that we have gotten is political freedom that isn't even complete to begin with. So I think that to just wrap up my speech quickly, why do I say that?
No, thank you so much.
Time is up. Okay.
So your 5 minutes is up. But thank you so much. So we will proceed to round 2 of our debate, which should take us only 6 minutes. And so we will get both teams to respond to each other. And so we'll start with Nkosinathi from the opposing team to just give a response. You will be limited to only 3 minutes to just give a response to what your counterpart had to say. And then after Nkosinathi, will then have Simpiwe of the affirmative team to also just give a response to the arguments that were brought by the other team. So let us start with Nkosinathi. You have exactly 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think, yeah, let me start in this way. Speaker A1 said that failure does not mean selling out. We need to understand the position that the president had at the time. One thing we need to understand is that the world was behind the revolution in South Africa at the time. South Africa was being sanctioned because of the apartheid regime. So any decision that the president could have made or taken at the time was going to be supported internationally. He had a lot of power at the time. There was a lot that he could have done. Now, when you say that failure does not mean
I think you can. I will give you your seconds that you lost there, but you can continue. I think there was an error from my side.
Okay, is everything okay now?
Yeah, you can continue. So I'll give you those few seconds that you lost.
All right. Speaker Iwan also said that to sell out means that you made is to make Black people's lives more miserable, and that's exactly what happened. If you can check the poverty rates, they did not decrease. If they did, it was by minimal amounts, and they went back to normal after the years. Normal being normal for the white supremacist. You said better education. Free education started with Zuma back in 2018. Education has always been expensive. There were these bursaries that were given to people, and they were coming from private. And after private, you come back, you work for them. Black people were not enabled and taught to be owners. They were taught to be slaves of the capitalist. Right. You said that the objective was not to bring change, but to bring peace. And I find that ridiculous. What is peace without change? What peace are you trying to give me as a poor Black person when I don't own land, when I don't have anything? You're trying to ease a fight between me and the white capitalist. Why? I want his land. It's mine. Right. Speaker A2 said that Mandela wanted us to have the land. Wanting us to have the land is not enough. You have to give us access to the land. You have to redistribute the land so that we have it. You also said that he allowed us to occupy the land, and that is not true. The constitution for occupying land, taking land with no compensation, is still in process. It's not even finished yet. And then you also said that we have been given the power. And what power have we been given? The ANC at the time, if you can, okay, no, of course, we won't remember, but the ANC at the time was crippled and they did not have a choice. A lot of people in the administration came from trade unions, meaning that they were educators. These were not revolutionaries. These were not, and these were the people who are holding office in municipalities and the likes. And when you have such people in power, they are easily bribable or bought because they did not fight for the Azang Bazabalas. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. And I'll repeat again. President Nelson Mandela had the support of the world at the time. Everyone was waiting for democracy to begin in South Africa. Any decision that he would have made was going to be supported. We were not going to be sanctioned. It doesn't make sense for the IMF to sanction the apartheid regime, and then sanction Mandela as well for taking back the land and redistributing wealth. If he had done that at the time, he would have had support. But he couldn't have done that because his pockets were now okay.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you. Your time is now up. Simpiwe, it's your turn. You also have exactly 3 minutes to speak.
Is everything fine?
Yes, yeah, you can speak.
Okay. It's very sad because in team opposition, we see a lot of contradiction. Speaker 1, Nati, overestimates the power that Nelson Mandela had post-apartheid. And Speaker 2, Ruth, actually acknowledges the fact that it was actually not that easy for us to just say, we can just take the land just like that. We see a lot of contradiction there, panel, and we think that is something that should be recognized. However, we think that for us to actually have a running economy, we actually have to recognize the fact that it has to be it is interdependent with relations to other countries, to other international countries. And these international countries that we actually sort of depend on for investments and for trade and all these things are capitalistic. We don't think that just switching to a nationalistic policy would have actually made it easy for us to keep our relations with other countries. We actually don't think that Nati recognizes the fact that South Africa would not have just functioned on its own independently without actually having relations with other countries, which is why it was so hard to actually dismantle the capitalistic ideas that were actually held after apartheid. However, we don't think that even though we did not get the land back, that actually makes Nelson Mandela a sellout, because we do think that some good actually came from his leadership. And we think that this is something that is highly ignored from our opposition. And we actually don't appreciate that in today's debate. Ruth tells us that Nelson Mandela is a sellout because he didn't use his social capital to sort of influence society in a particular way. We don't think that's the case. We think that the reason why actually people hated on Mandela is because of how he used his influence to make sure that Black lives are actually recognized internationally and are treated like they're supposed to. Also, she tells us that she doesn't think that he used his influence for inclusivity of women, such as recognizing Winnie Mandela. We think that is something that is super personal, and we don't think that just because of that situation, it makes Nelson Mandela a sellout. Moreover, we think that just because a leader does not necessarily agree entirely with society's visions does not necessarily make him a sellout. We think at some point society was actually in aggression and wanted to avenge back. Not agreeing with that and wanting peace does not necessarily put people in the most miserable position. We don't think that it actually continued to make Black lives even more miserable. We think that bringing peace was actually a way of progressing and moving on from that era. Avenging back and fighting, we don't think that that was...
Thank you, Simpiwe. Thank you so much. Your time is... All right, sorry about that. Yes, so we will be moving on to the third round, where we will just get some closing statements from both teams, and then we will open it to the floor. Then in this round, the two speakers will only have 2 minutes each to just give us their closing statement. So we'll start with the opposing team, and then we will hear from Ruth to give us some closing statements. And then after Ruth, Nuntlantla from the affirmative team will just give us their closing statement there. So Ruth, you have the platform. You will only have 2 minutes for this round. Just hold on. I think your mic is still on mute.
It's okay now.
Yes, you have You have exactly 2 minutes. You can start now.
A leader is someone who gives the people what they want. A leader is someone who represents the views and the desires of the people. Nelson Mandela didn't do that. Nelson Mandela pursued views and ideologies which he thought were beneficial at the time. People did not want reconciliation. People would have wanted Winnie Mandela to be part of the representatives of the new democratic dispensation. He didn't allow for that conversation to happen. He didn't use his influence to represent Black women. The reason why Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was excluded from being part of leadership and being a deputy president even when the Zuma saga happened is because Nelson Mandela didn't create a precedent of women leading within the ANC when he had the opportunity. We think this is very regrettable given the amount of influence and international attention that he had at the time. Countries that are very poor, such as Ethiopia, have had females be their president. Why didn't our country, at the time where it mattered most, didn't include women and create the type of precedent? Nelson Mandela could have done that. He was the best person to do that, given the amount of influence that Winnie Mandela had in the movement, but he didn't. He forced the TRC and reconciliation to happen, strong arming Black people into reconciliation that they were not ready for. He didn't lead the conversation about land. He didn't bring it up as often as he should have. And this is why we have those conversations even today. This is why there is a delay. We think that compared to all the other leaders that have existed and led the democratic dispensation in South Africa post Nelson Mandela, they've had a better influence than him. They've been able to give us a bit of free education. They've been able to give us free ARVs and all of that. And these are things that are great, but we think that at the time, given his influence, given his power, and given that he was the first Black democratic president, Nelson Mandela could have done much better than he would have. He betrayed the principles of the Freedom Charter. He betrayed the radical ideas of equal distribution of income and wealth that the ANC had and that the Black people deserved at the time. And we can't therefore celebrate the very small achievements that he had. We have to look for what is fundamental, and we can't, I think my 2 minutes is up. Oh yeah, but I will continue speaking. We think that we can't just say he did some good and we have to value him for that. That some good isn't fundamental life-changing for Black people.
Right, thank you so much. Your 2 minutes is up. Then the last speaker will be Nonhlanhla. Just give us closing comments from your side. You'll also have exactly 2 minutes to round up. Hold on, Nonhlanhla, your mic is also on mute.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think very important, something that we need to understand and something that was brought up by like our opponents and stuff like that is the idea of not understanding how the white world actually work and the idea of undermining what white supremacy is in this instance. What we get specifically is the idea of saying that Nelson Mandela had the power, Nelson Mandela had the influence and stuff like that. But in the fact that the whiteness works in such a way that it presents someone as someone who's capable to be able to do the power and have the power to influence and do the decisions. That is why Nelson Mandela had the constitution written in like land redistribution and stuff like that, but the land has not yet been redistributed, right? So that's the ideology of saying that white supremacy exists in all levels. And to respond in the idea of like saying like the TRC was a form of ideology of allowing Black people to like being forced to forgiveness and stuff like that. We think that that's what really like whiteness, and it's all painted whiteness and the way it is. I want us to also understand from what was presented from our opponents that Nelson Mandela isn't the sellout here. Nelson Mandela is the hero here, and the white supremacist is actually the enemy. Whiteness in the way that it operates and the way it's supported by the international organizations and the way it functions is the ideology that continuously paint us as people that won't be progressive and stuff like that, right? Another thing that I think is very important for us to notice is the idea of, even if like our opponents say that we should have like opted for the idea of fighting for the land and stuff like that, we do think that even though we've fighted, we would not have won the fight. That is why, like in apartheid, when Nelson Mandela tries and brings up the idea of land and tells FW de Klerk declares that, listen, we're going to start a war right now. And the war does not mean a war against the National Party and the ANC. The war meant that the war against South African Black people and the entire world, because remember, whiteness is supported internationally by the organization. I think what we don't understand in entirety is that whiteness is supported internationally. And for as long as whiteness is supported internationally and white supremacy and white privilege is a real thing, we'll forever see our people as sellouts, we'll forever see like the people that are trying to attempt and fight the system as sellout.
Thank you so much, Nomhlanhla. Your time is up. So that should round up our debate. Thank you so much to all our panelists. I will now open it to the floor, and I'll ask people to behave in this round. I'm sure people have got burning questions of all sorts, but so I'll ask, if you have a question, just raise your hand, use the raise hand button, and then I will give you an opportunity to ask a question. We'll only do this for 10 minutes, and then that will be it for the day. So I will give you a minute to ask a question. You can either direct it to a team or an individual member of the team, or just make any comments and contributions that you have from your side, but you'll have exactly 1 minute to do so. So I already see one hand, so I just want to make it clear once again that just use the raise hand button, and then you'll be given an opportunity to speak. So now we have got a hand from Tutuzelo. I will give you 1 minute to ask a question or make a comment, and then we'll proceed from there.
Good. Okay, umbuzo wami directed to Usimpiwe. I think Simpiwe is the name. Okay, first I have a comment here. I think Nelson Mandela was the reason for the demise of Africa, because initially they had a goal, which was to liberate Africa from the white people. And then Mandela, by taking South Africa out of the equation, he allowed the whites to infiltrate Africa, therefore take our minerals even more. And then what you don't realize is that Mandela, by saying we are free, he stopped the resistance and allowed white supremacy. Because now a black child thinks he's free just because he can walk to a public toilet with white people. A black child thinks he's free because he can go to the movie with white people. Now, I have a question. What did you mean by saying Africa or South Africa depends on other countries? Because I think we have all the resources we need as Africa. Gold can circulate around Africa. We have the chart, which is the most important device on the cell phone, which is in Congo. We have the diamonds. We have all we need to survive independently in Africa.
Right. So thank you so much, Tutuzelo. Your minute is up, but I think Simpiwe got the question there because it was directed to her. Simpiwe, can you just give your quick response to that question by Tutuzelo there? All right. Seems like Simpiwe is having some challenges there. Can we rather have, so instead of, okay, Simpiwe is back. Simpiwe, are you prepared to answer that question? Yes, thank you.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I think, yes, we do have resources and we do have enough resources, but we have to consider that just having resources is not enough. Production of those resources is necessary. And we know that skills and, technology actually is more advanced in other countries, which is why it's important for us to actually have relations and relationships with other countries for the transmission of those skills. So I don't think that just on our own we can function as successfully as he actually envisioned us to, it can be attempted, but I do think that relations with other Western countries is necessary, especially considering how advanced society is in status quo.
We can't hear you, sir.
All right. Yes, thank you so much, Nati. I was saying thank you to Simpiwe. I have another hand from Sfi, so that's the hand I'm going to take next, but I will also be taking questions from people that watching us live on Facebook, and I'll also be reading some of their comments as well. But let me start with the hands that I have here on Zoom for now. I will take Sfiso. I'll give you just 1 minute to make your comment or ask a question. So Sfiso, you may now speak.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes.
All right. So my question is for Roots team. So at the point where you guys are singling out Nelson Mandela apart from the ANC, how is it possible for you to blame him as an individual when we know that a structure such as the ANC, which fought for the freedom, placed him at the top and placed him as the best candidate to lead the country through the democratic revolution? That's the first question. Secondly, you said that the leader does what the people want. That isn't a good leader, a leader that does what the people need. And at the time, the ANC as a collective decided that Nelson Mandela was the leader that the people needed, and therefore his actions are the ones that would best have the best solution.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Fiso. I think that was directed to the entire team. So anyone from Ruth's team can answer, either Nati or Ruth can answer that question. I see Nati, your hand is up, so you can attempt to answer that one.
Yeah, thanks. The question was, why are we focusing, if I got it correctly, why are we focusing on Mandela alone instead of looking at the entire ANC? Well, of course, to judge a party, you have to look at its leader. When policies are being made, the president has to approve them. The president has to say, it's okay, Anosha, guys, this is okay. The president is leading the ANC. The president is directing and chairing the ideas within the ANC. We cannot ignore. He's leading the entire country, and we can't say no. Let's look at him as individual and whatnot. We are not trying to separate the president from the ANC. The president was a member of the ANC, and his decisions that he took were the decisions of the ANC. But for the purpose of the debate, yes, we focus solely on Mandela because we're trying to see whether he was a sellout or not. And that's why also we looked into his actions before being the president. We looked at what happened from the moment he was free and how he started making relations with capitalists. And that's where he becomes a sellout. And that's where, personally, yes, he becomes a sellout. I think my partner will answer the second part of the question.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Nati. I don't see any new hands. I still have a hand from Tutuzelo. I don't know if that's the hand that was raised earlier. Okay, so there's no new question from that side. So anyone who has a question, just press the raise hand button, and we will give you an opportunity to speak. I have a comment from Facebook. Keniluvisi is saying, difficult question to answer because a coin has two sides, head and tail, and the two cannot be compared. That was his comment on the question, is Nelson Mandela a hero or a sellout? I saw another hand here. It has quickly disappeared. I forgot where it came from. You can alternatively, I see there's people that do not have mics, so you can alternatively just post your question on the chat, and I can read the question out on your behalf. Right. Any questions from anyone? Any comments? Okay, right. I think Tutuzelo has another question, so I'll give you another minute to speak.
Okay, thank you. Now, going back to Uru's Simtiwane, she said that we still have relations to the other countries. That I agree with. But then the relationship we have with them is that they are capitalists and they're exploiting us. We may have a relationship, I can agree, but then we're not benefiting of that relationship. We give them gold for a lower price, they sell us watches for a greater price, which is not economically viable. Now, I have a question for you, since you are portraying Mandela as a hero. What has Mandela done for the development of a black person that is sustainable? Keyword, sustainable. Don't tell me about BEE, because white people are still infiltrating the BEE by using black people as a front. So I have a question. That's my question for you. What is Mandela doing for the development of a black person? Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much for that question. I think Nonhlanhla is going to answer that, right? Yes, you can go ahead.
I think into what has been really something that we need to look into as individuals and a black society that is trying to progress and like fight the system is the idea of how whiteness works in itself. And it's the idea of identifying that, sharp, maybe we have the resources, maybe we have everything we need, but why is it that even after Zimbabwe gained everything that they needed to become who they really wanted, why isn't it that they have, like, why is it that they couldn't be who they really, why was their economy decreasing? It's the idea of white supremacy, it's the idea of whiteness and how it works in white privilege. Furthermore, you ask us to tell you something that Nelson Mandela has developed that is sustainable for black people, right? Nelson Mandela comes with the highest law in the land. In a democratic land, he comes with a constitution that tells us that we can derive the land when we want in the interest of social justice. But what becomes problematic is that even when Nelson Mandela has granted us the power to do so, why is it that that power or that land has not been transferred to us? It's the ideology of white supremacy and whiteness and how it has like been able to, like, because in this case, the government has no ownership of our land. Our land is owned by people that are living in Britain and sipping tea right there. So the ideology, again, as I repeat, is white supremacy and white privilege.
Thank you. I have another hand there. You know, some people didn't join with their real names, so I will not know who that is, but I will just give you an opportunity to speak. The person who posted on the comments that they have a question there. So if you are still there, you may now speak. The name there is written Nan, N-O-N. So if you still have that question, I will give you a chance to speak. Yes, you have the floor.
Hi. I just wanted to ask the opposition, based on the proposition's argument of white supremacy and how it informs global politics and global economic politics. We look at the Middle East and how America has invested billions of dollars to project a war on Syrians, to project a war on Yemens, to project a war on the entire Middle East for the purposes of oil, because people do not want to have the people that the American government wants them to be governed by, to govern them. So people want socialist governments, but America wants capitalist governments. So they insert leaders that are capitalist in order to allow them to loot and to take resources from these countries. And in the event that the people resist, we see what is happening in Syria. Syria is in shatters, it is completely destroyed. So the question then becomes for me, the spectrum is either you become a state where you have documented rights like the Constitution, where you can claim land, like through Section 28, where the state can take land on a national level in order to redistribute, or you can have Zimbabwe where you have land grabs, or you can have Syria where you have a resistance but you're being bombed to death. These trajectories tell you that in every situation where Blackness or any other non-whiteness has tried to resist whiteness, they've been met with violence. And that's what all our revolutionaries say. They say the only way that Blackness can survive is if we use violence. But we don't have the capacity for violence. We don't have weapons. We don't have the military. We don't have drones. We don't spend as much on arms as America does. America has one of the biggest arms budgets in the world. So then the question becomes, if we're willing to say our people are sellouts, did they really ever stand a chance against a country that is willing to bomb people for oil? Did they? That's my question to opposition.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So anyone from the opposition to answer that question? I see Nati is ready, so you can answer that question. I think from this one, I'll just take two more questions and then we can officially close it. But I'll now give a chance to Nati to respond to that question there.
All right, I had the question, thank you. I think what we have to acknowledge to that question is that, and what you're saying is true, there are other countries who are being oppressed and who are suffering currently because they chose not to be democratic or capitalistic. And yeah, but then we also have to acknowledge that that does not change that it's selling out. If you divert from your initial view of things, if you read the Freedom Charter and you are saying, yes, I agree with what is in the Freedom Charter, and then you get into power, then now you can't put in things because of the Freedom Charter, because of other external forces, you are selling out. Maybe with a good reason, maybe with a bad reason, but at the end of the day, you are selling out. Let's not try and justify that. Number two, we are not like Syria and Zimbabwe. We have to understand that South Africa was being sanctioned for the apartheid regime. The world at the time was against the apartheid regime. So we had that angle. We had that on our side to say that no, any changes that we can bring, we are going to be supported because we are bringing them democratically, right? That's the direction we are moving. We had that angle. We could say that no, because the Americas and whatnot supporting us, when we take a decision which might seem to be more of a socialist and whatnot, there would be understanding because they were on our side and they were against the apartheid regime, which was white supremacist and kept wealth in the hands of the white minority in this country. I hope I've answered the question. And yes, to the chairperson, this hand that is being raised by me here, it was a question actually earlier. It wasn't a hand to answer. I don't know if you're taking questions or comments from the panel any longer.
All right. Yes, I'll give you that opportunity to ask a question as well. So let me give you 1 minute to ask that question.
No, it's okay. I'm covered. It's okay. Thank you.
All right. Let's take the last two questions, the last two hands, and then we can close it. But if there's nothing else left to say, and then we can close it. So I'll just give an opportunity to two more people to either make a comment or ask a question, if there is any. If I don't get any hands, and we can officially close the debate. Okay, I think Tutuzelo has another question or comment. I'll give you a minute to speak. I think it will be the last one, and then we will just close it. So yeah, you can speak.
Oh, okay. The issue here, America and them being in alliance with the South African government. I don't think that's the case because I don't think white people gave us liberty because they wanted to. They saw Gucci, the struggle was gaining momentum. They saw Gucci, Mkonto Caesar was actually getting more weapons, was actually getting momentum to actually resist the apartheid government. So what they did, they changed their strategy, which was to colonize us socio-economically, which was to colonize a black child, which is why we have people who think white people are superior. So my point is, they didn't liberate us, but they changed their strategy from physical force to economical. That's my point. Thank you.
All right. Yes, thank you so much, Tutuzelo. I don't know if Nonhlanhla wanted to say something there about that. Yes, Nonhlanhla, I think you'll be the last person to speak, and then we will close it.
I think at this point, Untutu understands the ideology of like whiteness and where it comes from, right? I think he now understands that whiteness and the way it is structured, it will continuously change their strategies and make them seem like we are moving or else we are not, right? But very important to like the idea of coming back to who Nelson Mandela is as an individual. Nelson Mandela is in the way he is and in the way he does his things would say he's a hero. And not only him, we think that everyone who has attempted to like try and do everything in their way to actually like advance the ideologies and the lives of the black people would advise and would say that person is a hero in the way it is structured. So to Susan and to everyone else, I think the very chat is why is supremacy and white privilege strongly prevailing even today, and what is it that we can do as black people, like as black people that continuously want to see change? Yeah, thank you.
We were supposed to cripple this white supremacy. I'm sorry, Chapetin, but we're supposed to cripple it that came in, not just hide behind it and say, no, let everything happen because whites exist and they are there being supreme of us. No, we're supposed to cripple the power that they have and take power and bring it back to the native of the nation.
And end up like Zimbabwe.
No, end up like Zimbabwe, how? And what do you mean end up like Zimbabwe was sanctioned because of the way it did things. We don't have to imitate them exactly. But we can't say,
what other alternatives?
Right.
What other alternatives?
Let me not allow that dialogue there. But thank you so much for those contributions and those inputs. I think it is safe to close it here. I know if we are to take questions, we can go on the whole day because it is a very interesting discussion. But I just want to take this time and thank everyone who managed to join us for the debate today. The aim really was not to come to a conclusion of whether Mandela is a sellout or a hero, but to really explore what our former struggle heroes have done, and what is it that could have been done different? What is it that we acknowledge that they did that is benefiting us today, and what are those loopholes that are there for us to take responsibility and correct even moving forward, because there's nothing we can do to bring back Mandela to come and fix if there are things that we feel like he did not do right. But this is for us to see what lessons do we draw from our former leaders, and what do we do as young people, as the youth, to actually take leadership and learning from both the victories and some of the difficulties that our former leaders had. So thank you so much once again to everyone for being part of the debate. I think this is the first of many. We will have more interesting discussions like this in order to enlighten ourselves more and prepare ourselves more for the battle that is ahead of us. So I just want to send my sincere thanks to everyone who was part of the panel and everyone who managed to join the debate. Also, thanks to Ruth for also being able to join in the last minute because one of our panelists could not make it due to load shedding there. So Nati, thank you so much. Piwe and Nonhlanhla, I appreciate you guys so much for the effort that you have made and the very meaningful contributions that you have given us today. I think we have got a lot to go and look at, a lot to go and study about our struggle, and then prepare ourselves better for the battle that is ahead. So yes, I think I will close the debate here, and I hope to see you in the next event that we're gonna have. So just keep looking out for what's next. Please follow our Facebook page and our YouTube channel as well. We also have a WhatsApp group, so if you want to join that Arise Black Child WhatsApp group, do let me know. But otherwise, that's it for today. Until we meet next time, thank you so much to everyone.